on, everybody? Welcome back to Frosty Sports and our content segment, The Meltdown, with me, Llama77, and that guy over there, your boy Q. Q, how we doing today?
Yo, what I do? What I do? It's the middle of the week for us here while we're recording, man. It's week back from Easter, so things were a little slow to start the week, kind of getting into our groove a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, we've got us a stacked slate, nice fun weekend to cover as far as some Rocket League. We got kickoff, the VCT. Man, it's a good time to be alive for some esports, man.
It really is. I mean, we had so many things over the weekend. Like, we had Counter-Strike as well. Like, we are living the dream. League of Legends, I know you're kind of getting into that, but I'm kind of pushing you into the deep end. But so much esports, so much to talk about, and I think the best place to start is with Rocket League.
Yeah, I mean, you know what we do? I feel like that's one of the things that you and I do the most, and we almost like live, eat, sleep, and breathe this thing. And I'll tell you what, though, I don't want to sound like a broken record because I know I said this a lot about VCT Masters, but this is like one of the best RLCS lands that I can remember in a kind of recent history, right? It feels like the playing field was really leveled. We didn't get anything that I don't think anyone was expecting, especially when we talk about the big things at the end, like the main results. Um, and just a lot of great matchups from start to finish. It was a lot of fun to watch.
It really was. And I think I have to agree. Like, it might be just like a recency bias, but it
Right.
really felt like that. Like, we had so many best of sevens. We had so
Yeah.
many games going, like, into overtime. We had, really great matchups, I feel like, and really great storylines throughout it all. And at the end of the day, we even got an NA versus EU matchup in the finals. So, like, what more do you even want for a LAN?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And we'll talk more about playoffs in a minute because I do want to start with Swiss, but it was interesting how playoffs started. There was a chance that we could see all four EU teams in the finals. There was a chance that we could see four different regions, represented in four different EU teams in the semifinals, four regions in the semifinals. So like we kind of saw just how close like the gap was to being closed, which was a lot of fun. But I was kind of nervous for NA when we talk about at the start of Swiss. I actually not texted. I tweeted it out or zeeted. What are we calling it now that it's I don't know. But I tweeted out over on the Twitter sphere, like I was really kind of concerned about NA day one.
I was too, and I think they really did kind of underperform. Although, like, out of all the regions, I feel like everybody was expecting them. Like, there has been all this like NA hate, like,
Right.
NA's never gonna live up to EU, but it was like very even across all the regions. It felt like, and for NA, I feel like a couple teams did not perform up towards that par. G2 was just being G2, and if G2 didn't have the performance they had, I would have even questioned like how good NA did as a whole in the region at the LAN.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think especially when you looked at like how Swiss started, right? You had G2 and Gen G face off against one another in round number 2, and you kind of figured that at the biggest of stages, G2 would take it. All of a sudden, Gen G takes that. LG starts off with, losing to both South American squads to start off their day. OG's only win was against Limitless, which I think, maybe some bias because I love to see the Limitless boys, but I thought Limitless, that series could have gone a lot different had that overtime in game one gone the opposite ways. I really think that Limitless was playing close with OG. OG stepped it up a little bit in day two, but just overall for NA, it was worrisome.
It's a little bit rough. And I think that obviously, like, it was kind of interesting to like think even further back that before the LAN, like NA was one of those regions that, yes, they do have 4 spots, but it was hotly contested, like right up until the end of that third qualifier to get on in. So to kind of go into this next round of qualifiers, it'll be interesting to see, like, do those teams that played at LAN, what happens to them? Like, do they kind of get this confidence that like, oh, we played on LAN, we played all these great teams, we got all these extra strategies, now we can definitely go back to our own region and beat them? Or are they going home like limping and they're like, oh no, now we lost so badly that like we're not playing well, we need to fix up our strategies, and all these new kids on the block are going to be coming in and trying to take us out in those qualifiers?
So I got a question then. Do you feel like, because obviously G2 had a pretty good bounce back as far as for NA, right? Gen G, I would say when you look at the playoffs, I mean, they took Gentlemates to 7. You could argue that maybe even looked a little bit more. Would you say that they're more competitive than Carmine Court? They definitely looked like they were close, right? But do you feel that the other two teams at least had a big enough bounce back in the second day to like justify not looking at roster changes, or what are you thinking here?
I mean, it's tough because like to make it to LAN, like, is the entirety of a goal for an
Right,
org. And like,
exactly.
you have to kind of think again, like, we've talked about this a little bit before, that it's like, you either are like picking up a single player that's on the market, or you're picking up a brand new whole team, which I don't think they want to pick up a brand new whole team. I think they
Right.
have really good base parts, but at the same time, I don't actually know if there's someone that fits their style well enough, unless they're poaching from like another big organization and like they pull somebody like, okay, maybe we can give a good offer to a G2 player or something. Maybe that fixes our problems. But I think you have qualifiers coming up so close to the event. You only have what, like 2 weeks from the
2
end of it.
weeks,
I
yeah.
don't think you should make changes.
No, yeah, that's tough too. I didn't even think about the fact that it's literally 2 weeks until the start. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks till the start of it. I know the end of the month is when the first like broadcast is, the 26th through 28th. But so I didn't think about that much there. Do you feel like any of these teams, because of that small gap, might have a struggle in the first qualifier?
Maybe. I mean, I think it'll be really telling, and also that like those points do carry over. We have to remember
Right.
that like you have, even though you found success in the first half, you're going to have to find success in the second half, but you do have a little bit of a head start. However, like we said, there are going to be those other teams that, it'll be interesting because we kind of put the microscope on Valorant last time. We're like, okay, these teams that are not going to LAN, what are they going to do for scrims? I feel like it's kind of
Right.
the same thing for like those teams that might have dropped out early. That like, what are you doing? I mean, like we said, you're probably not going and playing in weekly tournaments, where we're seeing some of these bubble teams that have gotten consistently like top 48, top 32, now playing in all these events, getting better and better and better, and they could surprise you.
So let's transpose back to Swiss here just for a moment, because one thing that we talked about last week, Llama, was kind of how open the bracket was. And we kind of talked about one region in particular that I feel like might have underdelivered. I kind of wanted to pick your brain on this. Looking at Power, I think we were talking about this might be like the best OCE team that we've seen getting sent to a major. And for Power, I mean, yeah, you went to round 5, and unfortunately, you crossed paths with G2. But I think when you look at their path, they beat the teams they were supposed to, and I would say that they underperformed in the games that they needed to like perform in. So I'm not sure how to feel. I kind of want to get your thoughts there.
I think so too. I mean, I think it's a little bit tough that like for these, I guess, non-major regions that I kind of only really consider like North America, EU, like these big major regions that are supposed to have these high expectations. For some of the smaller regions, I feel like they don't have as big as those expectations, but also like it feels bad when they like just can't really get anything done. So like they ended up, I believe, 14th on the overall standings. They only won one game, and it was against Elevate. So it's really, really tough to kind of
You're
like,
thinking of Quick Trip.
yes.
I'm talking Power.
Oh, okay. My bad. Yes, I still think they underperformed.
Yeah. You're good. You're good. I think the big thing was because they only beat Quick Trip, though, right? You beat Quick Trip, and then a Rule 1 team that kind of looked suspect, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then with like the only team that Quick Trip beat that you were talking about was Elevate. Elevate lost to Limitless in a show match afterwards. So I don't know if that talks more about the performance of SSA or the drop off of APAC and some of the other regions. But it's going to be tough because you got less chances. You're sending less teams, which starts like that super team kind of bottleneck at the top. But
Yeah.
I would like to start seeing some of the minor regions competing, because I did like seeing on going into Saturday, we still had a chance of at least seeing Mina in South America. I would have loved to have there been a potential of maybe even adding in one of the minor regions into that as well, you know?
And I think this is actually like one of the better years, I feel like, for those minor regions, that
Yeah.
they got a couple of teams in that top 8. They had a chance to actually, like you said, get that representation in towards the finals. I feel like looking at like a team like Team Falcons is like a great team to kind of keep an eye on looking forward. That like they had a really good showing, and also I don't think they should be disappointed where they ended, because I think it's all about getting that experience. Where we talk about some of these NA and EU players that have played at that stage so many times before, they know what it feels like to win in that stadium on that level. So for Falcons and a couple of these other minor region teams, I hope they can take this kind of lesson back to their own regions, practice it up, and then hopefully come back to show better.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Team Falcons, you lost to Gentlemates, the team that won the grand finals,
Yeah.
and then Carmine Corp. And first off, can we just say that it felt like this should have been like a grand final matchup, and we got it twice before the semifinals. Like and both times it delivered a banger of a product. It went 5 during the Swiss matchup. It went 7 during the quarterfinals. I would say of the quarterfinal matchups, probably the best of them, especially in the fact that you only had the one overtime. It really was kind of like the tussle back and forth without that 50-50 at the end. And it was the overtime for Carmine Corp to force it into game 7, which kind of helped them pull things back too after Falcons were looking to go with the reverse sweep. And man, just the storyline was so good, and to think that obviously, whoever lost that wasn't going to be advancing to the top 4. But then for Carmine Corp to only go to the semifinals and then lose to Gentlemates, we just got like such a great story over the weekend.
It was really great. And honestly, I was really, really hoping that Gen G would do some damage there at the end with the 8-1 matchup. Just hoping. But they were really close. And I gotta say, just for Gentlemates in general, like I know they were the number 1 seed exiting out of Swiss. I know they were like the statistical probability like for them to win like was higher because they technically have an easier path. But honestly, I was in the boat that I wasn't expecting them to win.
This BDS team, or not BDS team, sorry, this Gentlemates team, I was thinking of BDS and the fact that that's where Seiko came from. This Gentlemates team is interesting because one thing that you and I always talk about, especially when we see these rosters get formed for like the weeklies, where we mentioned it's not always about just stacking the roster with a bunch of talent. They have to gel together, right? And this was, in a sense, one of those rosters. You had 3 players that were all on contending rosters last year between Juicy, Itachi, and Seiko. I mean, I guess you could say the one that was the least contending was Moist, but Moist was still contending last year. It's not the Moist that we're seeing this year. And all of a sudden, all 3 of them get dropped from their roster. I do almost feel like it was the perfect formula because they came in so underrated and they finally had 3 qualifiers to really kind of build up that synergy, because they kind of formed late, like pretty close to qualifier 1, if I'm not mistaken.
And that kind of grudge is a huge thing that like you get kind of dropped by
Right.
a team. We've seen it before that like, oh, we're just going to replace you with somebody a little bit better. And then you get these 3 players that all have a similar goal. They all are in a similar situation and they can form something amazing. And I really think like not only them as a team, but also just like to see the crowd behind them, that they had such a big like fan section. They had, I mean, so many people just like rooting for this team who had been kind of stunted and who had been kind of thrown away. And they're like, oh, these 3 players are not good enough. And then they go out and show everybody, not only to go out and win Swiss, by the way, which was crazy. Like I said, I don't think I was expecting them to go in, win Swiss, and then just win their way through the grand finals.
Yeah, it was interesting kind of watching the crowd, because obviously you had the fan bases from the 4 French organizations that were very, very prominent. You had the Fury crowd, which was pretty big as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there are any other outside of that. I don't think so. But it was like, as like the French organizations started falling out, it was almost like they were rooting against the other French organizations until the finals. And then especially because it was this Gentlemate squad that did have, somebody from the BDS squad, somebody that did come from that Carmine Corp, from the blue wall that was still there, on Championship Sunday, to see them all kind of come together. And then, of course, you obviously had the regional fight in the grand finals, G2 versus Gentlemates, and which we almost didn't get. Let's not forget how close it was to seeing Vitality get a chance in the grand finals once again as well, because that series is a banger too.
Oh, that really was. And honestly, like I said, it was one of the best lanes of all time. They gave us some really good matchups, and I'd honestly like to get your kind of take on this G2 team, because I've been seeing the power rankings all across Twitter. Some of them were April Fool's jokes, and I get that, but like everybody's putting G2 down like 4, 5, 6. They're like, okay, NA's not legit. They were very close against Vitality. They were very close against Gentlemates. What do you think, or what do you gauge about this G2 squad?
So I think the big thing is that they performed when they needed to. One, obviously getting, especially on the playoff stage, because you lose to BDS in round 4, so you don't qual in. Then you can say, you get an easier game against Power, and I think we can all agree that is the case. But even the series against G2, what was that, round 2? you had two games that went back and forth that kind of dictated like the pace. I think if G2 wins that second overtime, things completely change. People forget about how much 50-50 overtime games really are, especially once you get past that like what minute 20 seconds ish. Like at that point, it's really 50s on who wins. Yeah, the better team usually or whoever's like hottest wins, but that's not always the case. So I think G2 had a really good performance, especially when we talk about, when the lights are brightest, when it's single elimination. I think the thing that's hard to gauge is because of the fact that the fourth best EU team won the grand final. So it's like, obviously now all of a sudden you wonder, well, Karmine Corp had, everything else, the other three regionals. Can you put Gentlemates above them? I think most people probably not. So that's your 1-2. Then it's kind of like, but where's BDS? And then of course, as well as Vitality, because Vitality only lost to either Karmine Corp or G2 throughout all of their big plays in RLCS. So it's like, how do you balance all that? I think G2 is a top team though right now. I think they've proved that.
Okay. Yeah, I've also been seeing some teams or some players or whatever put Falcons actually above G2, where they said like they had a really tough run through Swiss and like they might have faced a really tough team going through playoffs. What are your thoughts on Team Falcons?
So I think Falcons are a top 5 team in the world. I think you just watch how they play. They happen to catch Karmine Corp. And again, when they played Karmine Corp in the playoffs, you had the that game 6 overtime, and I think Falcons had a couple of opportunities early on, if I'm not mistaken, that didn't fall. And then all of a sudden the story changes. Now Gentlemates isn't playing a team that they've played before. Maybe that changes things. Who knows? I think Falcon, this is the best MENA squad that we have ever seen. I'll be honest, I'm a big Khaled fan, near and dear, especially because he used to compete back in the DBD league back in the day. So for the people who know my roots, but I do think that this Falcons squad made the right moves during the offseason. They've shown that, and with the Twins and TRK, this Falcons squad just might win a major this year.
I could see it. I definitely could. We'll have to see, like we said, that improvement, taking the stage experience back towards their own region. Kind of talking about the offseason very quickly, Q. We've got that next regional coming up here in 2 weeks. Are there any squads or players you're looking out for that might shock the world, get into a top 32, or maybe even make some shakeups?
Are you talking about which region now?
North America.
For RLCS, who am I thinking? Have we figured out who You know what? I'm gonna be honest with you, Llama. I don't know if there's a team in particular that I can think of off the top of my head. Is there anyone you're thinking of?
I got 2 teams. I really like to see this TSM squad succeed. I think we've talked about them at ends. We've talked about Wavy. We've talked about the 2 collegiate players beside them. I think they didn't have as good as a performance as they wanted. They were very close to actually making it to land, but fell a little bit short in the last 2 qualifiers. So I'd like to see them succeed. I know I've also talked about the Nightya, Lev, Pigeon trio. I don't know if they'll stay together, but I really want to see these 3.
I wish they would. That was going to be my question, because that would be such a nasty squad, right? But I think it's, who is it of the 2? Is Nightya and Lev staying together, I think, right?
Yeah.
And they're trialing a third?
Yeah, I think right now they're playing with Nex, and then Pigeon is playing with Scythe from Cloverity, but not confirmed. I think roster lock was yesterday or something, right? We should go find out.
We should, maybe we can have one of the homies look in the background, give us an update. I don't know for sure, but it's crazy to think how quick it's right up on top of us, and we're rolling again, because I don't feel like we saw a whole bunch of roster moves, which kind of surprises me.
I mean, it's only 2 weeks away. I think that's the big thing, that like, do you really want to make a switch up and like have a chance that like you don't have the synergy, and then like you already have points, but if you start slow in this first qualifier, like you're already going to be behind the ball when you're already further behind the ball. So like you can't put yourself further behind. I feel like you just need to thick it out with the roster you have, and if you don't succeed, you don't succeed.
Okay, so am I tripping, or I thought you were asking me like outside bubble teams before on North America, then you threw out some teams that just didn't qualify? Because if you were asking me that, I do gotta agree with TSM, by the way, just for one.
Anybody that didn't qualify, yeah.
But I think the other one that just because I do want to backtrack and I do apologize, and we'll move back forward. We'll get this thing moving again, Chad. I promise. But I do want to see Space Station Gaming as well. I feel like that they've got a point to prove. And I think that they are going to do just that. I'm gonna be excited to watch them play.
I just think they're a big name, right? They're like, if
Yeah.
Space Station is not playing at the major, like something just feels wrong. It's like NRG not playing at the major. Like, what is going on? We got all these big name teams, but at the same time, they're close. They're close enough. I feel like where like you're in that top 10 where if you do win
Yeah.
a qualifier specifically, like you're in a very good position to try and hold a spot for that major. At the same time, it's all about that performance. And with those big names as well, I feel like they get such a bigger microscope put on them that like if you're a professional player under one of those professional names, you could easily be transferred out if you don't have one good performance in a good qualifier.
I also want to ask before we move on, what do you feel about Delete XD? Do we think that they've got it was nice to see them get top 16.
Man,
I feel like that's the name I did want to bring up before we moved on because it was nice to see them like because what they had 2 Swisses that they made, and then one of them didn't they make round 5, I think.
I think you're correct on that. I really like this team and I think they have a ton of potential. I would also like to say that like they're willing to go down and like play in the slums. Like they're one of these teams that is like playing and all and everything. Like they're grinding ranked. They're playing down in the weeklies. They're going to play these big events as well. So I feel like they're a team that is picking up a ton of practice all around. So we'll have to see if they can kind of perform in this back half. Again, they didn't go towards the LAN, which means they don't get all that experience against some of those better teams. But I'm really excited about this team and I think they have potential.
Yeah, I think they should be a lot of fun to watch here. I definitely feel like, man, as much as we now know that NA is like their dominance after, well, not, I shouldn't say dominance, but we know they're like, we know they've closed the gap, at least with EU, and then they can compete. Now knowing how close the competition at home makes me really excited to watch how Split 2 plays out. Should be a lot of fun, but did want to pick up your brain a little bit before we kind of move on to, because we got to talk some VCT here. But let's talk about some ALGS because we still have a little bit until we move on to LAN preparation. We still have what, a month? It starts like the 2nd of May or something like that. But we saw the leak, and we'll talk more about the leak in a minute. The new POI spawn changes, where now instead of the drop ship, you can actually get into a specific spawn based off of a numbers input. Kind of interested on your thoughts on that potentially changing for LAN, or at least was the thoughts.
I don't think you should change it for LAN. I think if you're making a major change, I mean, you give the player somewhat of enough time to try and adapt to it, but I feel like you need to make that change in between, like after the LAN is over and when the new season starts, because it's a huge change that like going from the dropship, obviously you have a choice to go anywhere. And we've always seen in Apex that like, I like this aspect of it. I know some players don't. We're like, you can pick anywhere. You can say you're going to land somewhere and you can land somewhere completely different. You can land right on top of someone and they have to be ready to 3v3 off of drop. So I think this kind of spawning into the location is not really what the game wants to be. It doesn't give you that extra chance to like fight for your POI and give you the chance to like assert your dominance. At the same time, it would be really interesting to see how they implement it, because if they do, like, if you're the number 1 team, you get to pick your POI first. Then it just like tells the teams that like, if you perform really well, you did assert your dominance and you do get that POI.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was just figuring out how you implement it off rip, right? Because that you have international leagues now coming into one pool of play. So do you say that it's based off of since there's 12 spots, you do like NA1, kind of like how you do, I guess, like the groupings for the 40 teams to kind of put them together, right, in that snake draft sort of order? Or do you base it off of their international scrims, which then in that case, you know, it's always getting played on NA servers? Do you wait until everyone's boot camping? It all seems very like you're not sure how they're going to be able to implement that first initial order, right? But then the next thing is, okay, well, let's do it randomly, where we have random random how, and then all of a sudden TSM needs, you know, priority in their last 2 series. They get drawn first, you know, like where we can let's see the the RNGs is, praise has come through once again. But I think that was my biggest draw. But I think the other thing, thinking about it, Llama, you have teams who don't get contested because the fact that they own the deeds to their POI. Now all of a sudden you're taking that aspect away. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, you could like leave if you leave 2 open spots at a POI, like I don't think anything's just gonna change. That like teams are just gonna pick their same POI they're picking right now, and like the spawn in, like the teams are just gonna pick the same POI and contest if they're already contesting. But I feel like I would honestly be interested to see if we could do a random spawn location, because it'd be so hard for the players, right? Because coaches, they not only build up a good game plan for the players, but they also build out loot pathing. It is something really smart they do so that they can loot it as fast as possible, get themselves in the zone as fast as possible. And when you're thrown into a brand new location that you haven't planned for, it's really, really tough to do that. So if they could implement it like that, it'd be absolute chaos.
So it is interesting that you bring up the whole coaches aspect. And I don't want to open up a big old can of worms, because I do think it is worth a good topic that maybe we can bring up later. But I want to get your initial thoughts, because they were thinking about making this change, going into a LAN where we've never gotten to practice this before. And I couldn't help but like kind of chuckle, because of course, heading into LAN, we're a month out, you're seeing all these coaches putting up their GoFundMes because their travel is not covered by EA or Respawn. So I just don't get like how you're going to make some big changes that could make it where having a coach is very, very valuable, but you're not covering the coach as a player to come to your LAN. It's just, it doesn't track with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, and I honestly think, again, I'm pretty sure it was just kind of a leak or a rumor. It's not confirmed by anybody at Respawn just yet, or EA, but we'll have to wait and see.
I have
think
a theory on that. You want to hear my theory?
Yeah, let's go.
I think they were going to do it for LAN, but because of the fact that it was leaked and got so much like negative pushback for it changing heading into LAN, they're not doing it, because we are noticing right now during international scrims that have been going on already during this week, they are not using it. They're dropping from the ship just like normal, just like they always do. There's still contests going on. Which then comes to the whole point of, was the leak a good or a bad thing? Because like, it's another one of those situations where it makes the pro league not look that professional when you talk about for sponsors and partners and things like that, right? But I do think the right call was made, just in the sense of like, we should not be switching out opinion.
And I honestly could see as well that like we've seen things before where like Apex kind of puts a little bait on a string in front of leakers. Like I don't know if you remember back to like Forge, where they're like, oh, we got this new legend, he's definitely gonna be the next new legend, and Revenant just like comes through and murders him, and no more Forge for you. It could be kind of the same scenario, but I also think that like thinking back to the most logical scenario, I feel like it's an LTM. That like it's something where we saw in the previous couple of TMs where you spawn in, you don't have to go off the drop ship, and maybe it's something like that where they just had it in the code, and now it's available in the private matches as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of having that in lobbies for like practice, I guess, for like players, but then that whole comes down to like, you have to have one of like the special codes to be able to run a lobby with like less than 20 people, or all of that stuff. But I also wanted to talk before we move away from ALGS, because like I said, I don't want to cover ALGS too much. I know we've already been yapping. You and me are professional yappers, and we got to keep things moving. But did you see the news about EXO and E6?
I heard something about it, but I didn't hear the exact.
Yeah, so EXO Clan is absorbing E6, which I found very interesting, because E6 has been one of those like fan bases in EMEA that's been like really prevalent, like always has a lot of people turning up. I mean, K20's been with E6 like I think from the beginning, right? And now all of a sudden they're merging into EXO Clan. I do love it, because I'm a huge EXO Clan fan. I've been a fan of theirs as they were in the APAC South region, although of course they were under different management at that time. But the brand has still stayed the same, and I'm gonna be excited to see, because it looks like K20's already under the EXO Clan banner. Which I think that those two are going to make a good combo, personally. But it's interesting to see that kind of being made, especially with the fact that neither team, is making like big waves right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting anytime you kind of get that merge, but also like you said, like E6 has just been like a staple of EMEA that they've always had like a semi decent roster that always performs relatively well. So to kind of see that merge, it's a little bit surprising for me, but at the same time, like you said, you can kind of get those fan bases together. You get an even more exciting roster as a possibility, and for EMEA, like. Again, there's still a lot of shakeups as a possibility because it's a region where there aren't a ton of like extra tier 2 and tier 3 tournaments. Like Zephyr literally had to make his own tournament series because there weren't enough outside tournaments for it. So like it's a region where things are completely wide open.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see as far as what else kind of happens in between the splits. I would imagine that we probably won't see too much more shake. Again, I think I was just more surprised at the timing. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
E6 is going to land, right? So it's not like it's a change of who's going to be representing or who the squad's going to be representing Atlanta or anything. I think that was the big thing for me as far as surprising timing wise. But yeah, I will be interested to see what else kind of changed. Does Ascend come back? I probably doubt it with the message that they had when they left, but who knows, right? Like we have been seeing some orgs coming back into ALGS. Does it happen in the EMEA region where it seems like the wild, wild west? I don't really know. But you know what's funny, Llama? We talked Masters Madrid last week,
Yeah.
and we're already starting up VCT this week. And it's almost like perfectly timed, I gotta say, because we've got a couple of week break before RLCS. ALGS right now is just scrims, so people can like really get involved into VCT. And by people, hi, I'm people, which is really fun for me because it's more time to really watch all three regions. I know we're not going to talk too much more than Americas over here. I'm going to talk a little bit just because I got people on Fraud Watch watching you guys, artists, and you, yay, running over to Pacific. But yeah, I'm excited to see VCT starting up. We've already got EMEA starting up today. Carmine Corp, establishing their dominance once more. But I was hoping maybe you can kind of fill us in. I know you were kind of wanting to break down as far as the format for people heading into stage 1, I think they're calling it.
Yes. So this is there's, I believe, 10. Yep, 10 teams for North America and for these other regions. Of course, for North America, you want to get in those top spots and try and qualify for the group stage bracket, but you only get 4 games to try and do so. So you got to try and place at the top 3 of your group, I believe, if you want to try and move on to that group stage. If you don't place at the top 3, you're done. So win your matches, and like you said, starting so close towards that Masters Madrid, you do have to kind of reset that some of these teams that were going to play in the big stages, now they kind of have to play in their own region.
I'm gonna be interested to see one thing. I was listening. I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I walk to and from the gym. So usually I'm listening to esports podcasts before I turn my music on, like when I actually get to the gym. And one thing that they were talking about on Plat Chat was the potential for some of these teams that went, especially the teams that went deep at Madrid, to maybe have a little bit of like a slow start out of the gates, especially looking at teams like Sentinels, because it feels like for a team like Sentinels, you would probably want to take a break. You know what I mean? Like give
Yeah.
your team a little bit of time after, winning the championship. But you only had at this point, you had 2 weeks until it was game time. So it's like you get yourself a week, maybe you're tough, which is why I think I'm going to be really interested to see the 100 Thieves Sentinels matchup. I think that is the 7th. What's the 7th, Llama? Sunday.
That is
Sunday night is gonna be
Sunday.
really
Yeah.
fun to watch. Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. I also think it's kind of interesting the different groups that for
Mm,
for North America specifically, you have Group Alpha, which is Sentinels, NRG, G2, Cloud9, and Crew. And then you have Group Omega, which is Loud, Evil Geniuses, MIBR, Leviathan, Furia, and 100 Thieves. So it's
Leviathan.
yeah, Leviathan. It's kind of there's some good groups there, and there's some big names that, like I said, both of us surprised that like the 100 Thieves of the world, the Cloud9 didn't find their success in this last split. Hopefully they can find it here.
Yeah, I mean, now at least you got yourself a little bit more time, right? You got the 5 weeks here. Super week will be in a couple weeks, so we'll spend more time digging in on the Americas at that point. But because of the way that the groups are, I feel like the way that the groups are, we're going to be led to having more consistent banger matchups, I
Yeah.
think, because you're probably only going to play against 1 or 2 crews and MIBRs. Like don't have them both in the same group. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, what's probably your favorite matchup that you're looking for in week number 1 in Americas?
I'll talk about this a little bit later on my hot and cold pick, but I actually think it's the Cloud9 versus Leviathan matchup. I think these are two teams that have kind of been not talked about in the picture for a little bit. That like Cloud9 is such a big name in all of esports, and both these two teams really could I feel like either one could take it, and I feel like winning this matchup specifically can really start to springboard your second half of the season.
I am definitely tuning in to all 4 matchups this weekend.
Yeah.
That is for sure. Because for Saturday, yeah, you start with Cloud9 Leviathan. The big one I'm looking for, NRG. Well, other than the Sentinels 100 Thieves, which we did just mention earlier, but the NRG and Loud, because I feel like Loud kind of had a little bit of an easier run in Madrid, which maybe made them seem like they're a little bit more put together than they are. And I also feel like that this NRG squad is going to have a point to prove. So I'm going to be really excited to see on Saturday how that bad boy breaks down, because I think Saturday is going to be a banger. Sunday, I don't want to be mean to say this. I'm happy that the one bad matchup is on the weekend. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, crew and Furia. I'm just saying though, just keeping it real.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. I think all 4 of those matches, though, still definitely worth tuning in for. And like we said, it's such a small sample size for the season that if you do lose once or even twice, there is a large risk that you don't make it. So every single match matters, even these ones that were like, okay, these teams are very close in skill level, or even the teams where like Sentinels, you don't have that chance to take a break. Where I think always back to like League of Legends, where you haven't really seen this, but like right after Worlds, there's a very short period between Worlds and like the summer split for all these different regions, and it's literally called like the Worlds effect, that like teams get back 2 weeks in and they start losing games because they haven't had enough prep time. All the other teams are playing on the current patch, well, where they're at Worlds, this doesn't apply as much for Valorant, but like they're playing on an old patch and they're not playing on the most up-to-date thing. So to see that extra preparation go in, we'll have to see if Sentinels can kind of flip the table and start this with an early win.
So you had mentioned the 5 weeks of play. Did we break down how the playoffs goes after that 5 weeks of play? Because I do think it's interesting. That's probably like intriguing to throw out. Did we talk about that?
Not yet.
Did you want to, or do you want me to do it?
Sure. Yeah, I can do it.
You do it?
Yeah, I could do it. Each of the first places in each of the groups will get a bye in towards that first round. So it is double elimination for all the teams. None of them start in the lower bracket, but for those first and second place teams, or the first seed and the second seed in the respective groups, they will get that extra bye. And then, of course, the seeds play the seeds. 4 plays 5, 3 plays 6, and then you have that double elimination tournament all the way through and through. So, for that 1 and 2 seed, you get a little bit extra prep time. And I feel like for Sentinels, that could be really huge, because we talk about that break period. If you can just get yourself an extra week to like calm down and relax and just take a step back, it could be huge.
Yeah, essentially you get yourself into that upper bracket semifinals, and you only need what 2 games to lock in?
Yeah.
Or no, hold on, because top 3 go.
Yeah.
So you just need to win 2 and you're in. Which is not, or no, you could you have to only win 2. Even if you lose, you lose your second. Sorry, I was just walking through that in my head and I made that way harder than it needed to be. I know we aren't going to focus too much on any of the other regions, Llama, but is there any other matchups in the other regions that you're looking forward to?
I mean, I'm just looking to see all of, I feel like, the Masters Madrid teams, and kind of if they're in this slump or not. They're like specifically looking at teams like PaperX, that like they had like started to find the pieces fitting together. At the same time, every single time we looked at their coach, I don't think he was the happiest camper in the world. So, to see all these Masters Madrid teams, to see how they make those adaptations, will be kind of interesting for me.
Well, you saw the change for PRX already, right?
Yep.
About Jing?
Yeah.
Jing being back, which is interesting. I will be intrigued to see how that plays out, because I felt like Moniette started doing so well, like as far as kind of fitting into that role. But in EMEA, I think if you watch EMEA, or even if you don't, especially if you don't, watch tomorrow. Well, I guess I can't say watch it, because this is going to be coming out after the fact. Oh, it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday on Thursday, man. Vitality versus Navi and Fnatic versus Team Heretics. Go back and watch the VODs on that, because I guarantee you it's going to be a banger.
Gonna be an exciting one. I mean, we've got so much again. This is esports heaven right now. Just like we said, we had some CS:GO finishing up. We got League of Legends North America's done. We got some other regions, LCK, LPL, gonna be finishing up their stuff this and the next weekend. So gonna be lots of exciting stuff, Q, here in these next upcoming weeks and these next upcoming months. Gonna be exciting to see all these lands as well popping up. I know we got Apex and Rocket League. We got Fortnite going to Texas. It seems like lots of good locations.
Yeah, a lot of good locations, and I'm gonna be excited, kind of seeing if we get anything else NA wise towards the end of the year. I'm still holding on to hope. Maybe we get an RLCS, but something tells me that we're going to Paris for the finals. But who knows? If it doesn't go to the Carmian Court facility, we might get it down in Texas. I have a feeling. But I want to do something well, maybe not one last time, but I know obviously you mentioned we're going into this little kind of lull where we've got only VCT going on. So we're going to do one last thing of hot and cold, but then after that, we've got some fun segments coming up. I got a question for you. Do you want to start, Llama, or do I start?
I think I've been starting. I only got 3 today. I think you got 3 as well. So I'll let you start today.
We'll start with me. All right. I like that because I'm actually going to be sticking with VCT. All right. Actually, all of mine are going to be VCT since, you guys told me I had to stop doing these long time predictions. Y'all are no fun. So this week we see everyone returning to play for VCT. I want to go to EMEA first because we've got tomorrow for us, yesterday for the people if they're watching as soon as this thing drops. Fnatic versus Team Heretics. Heretics, a team that underdelivered, I think some people would say, at Madrid, versus a team that didn't even qualify. So my question to you is, take for you is, Fnatic will return to dominance with a win against Heretics to start the season. I'm going to say, and I'm going to qualify this with a sweep.
Ooh, with a
Hot
sweep.
would be no, because I think people are expecting Fnatic to beat them. Cold would be yes.
It has to be with a sweep, though. Oof.
Do you want me to take away the qualifier of the sweep? Does that make it easier?
No. I actually think it's good because I think it is going to be a sweep, and I think it is going to be Fnatic to win it, just because, I think all the effects that we were talking about just for Team Heretics, that, again, they went to Master Madrid, they didn't perform, now they're kind of possibly in this slug as well against a team like Fnatic that I think everybody was surprised didn't make it towards Masters Madrid. So I'm going to say, yeah, I think they will, Fnatic will sweep it away.
Yeah, I the reason I had to put that as a close, I feel like a lot of people are expecting that. I personally, I'm gonna be keeping my eye on this Team Heretics squad. I think they're gonna have a point to prove, so I think it should be interesting. Remember, they didn't quite have a long Madrid stay, so
that is very true. I mean, I would love to see them succeed, and I think a lot of teams would. So we'll see what they can do starting that off. I'm going to switch it up a little bit, go away from Valorant. I've only got one Valorant, actually, for you today. So we're going to Rocket League first. It's the classic pick of the Frost Monday repeat for Frost number 132. Of course, on number 131, Sky's Luca Byra able to pick up the dub. Will one of those 3 players be on the winning team on the next Frost event?
I'm going to go with no, because I'm thinking that the Llama Super Squad, Llama's champions, whatever iteration of their name that they've been kind of changing every week, I'm expecting a big bounce back from them.
I mean, I think I am as well. And again, it's just talking about consistency of that team. I know we talk at ends about how good this squad is just playing together and playing with Pigeon specifically, but for them, they have placed top 4 for the past, I think, 7 weeks now, which is kind of absolutely crazy to find that consistency. And then you talk about a team like Unnatural Substances that has also been there to battle all through and through. Unnatural Substances, by the way, did just lock themselves in that RLCS roster. So Trent, the Lotus 8 player we know and love, now partnered up with Conf and Lesser for the entirety of hopefully this entirety of this RLCS season. So I think there's some good names that it might not be a repeat.
I'll be intrigued to see. I know I'm gonna definitely be keeping my eye on it. I also gotta say, Frost is a lot of fun for the April Fool's edition. If y'all didn't get a chance, definitely go make sure y'all go check out that VOD. That was a blast, man. But let's move on. I'm gonna go back to VCT because I told you that's where I'm sticking. All right. But I am gonna bring it back to Americas because I know that's where you really like to focus. We got 100 Thieves versus Sentinels. Sentinels, the champs. 100 Thieves got a point to prove after falling short, but I do think 100 Thieves maybe didn't look the best in their kickoff.
Yeah.
Does 100 Thieves pull off the upset in week number 1?
This one's a tough one, honestly, because like I think the 100 Thieves team like can put up good numbers against Sentinels. At the same time, like it is the literal world champions right now
Yeah.
holding the title, but like it's all that kind of like weighing it on a scale. Like, do Sentinels have a good bounce back? I think they have like. I think it will be a Sentinels win at the end of the day, just because the experience that like they've had players go to the stage and feel this kind of bounce back where they have to get quickly reset and ready to go before. And honestly, they're not. I mean, there's one new agent. There's not too many new changes, I feel like, for
Right.
the new split. So I think Sentinel's going to be able to bounce back.
So you're going with the cold take, going with the champs.
Yeah.
I can't say I don't blame you, man. That'd be a blaze and a hot take. The thing that 100 Thieves might do it. But I do got to say, referring back over to the Plat Chat podcast, a couple of them think, they're sitting kind of high on this 100 Thieves squad. And as much as I am not, they also were sitting pretty high on Sentinels. And I was not as well. So I am inclined to maybe listen just a little bit.
Okay. Well, we'll see if the world champions can do it, of course, for them. I feel like they have a lot of pressure on their back as well. They're like, you are the world champions. Like, you shouldn't be losing to anybody at this point and should have that flawless season to get back where you do. But we'll see if they can grind out a couple of wins. Going towards my second one, I'm sticking with VCT as well. So I got a different one, though. I know it was mentioned a little bit earlier. Cloud9 versus Leviathan to start us out with both of their first games here in the round robin stage. They have an opportunity to start 1-0. Will it be C9 cold winning or hot and spicy Leviathan taking the win?
Give me the hot and spicy Leviathan, baby. I'm a big believer in this squad. I'm going to be honest with you. I really was disappointed in the performance that we did see from the squad. I know that they made some changes. I know there was some rumors about maybe a little bit of some chemistry issues within the squad. But I think when you look at some of the changes that were made in the offseason, you bring in Calm, you bring in Aspas, you've got Tex. They've had some time to cook. They finished, 7th, 8th in that bracket during the kickoff. But I do think that they pull off a dub here.
Okay. I mean, I could definitely see it. And that's what I was saying a little bit earlier. It's like both these two teams definitely did not live up to their hype. I feel like everybody was expecting them to do better than they did. They didn't get to that level. So I think it'll be a really exciting, like, proving matchup for both these two teams to start their season off.
So for me, for my last, we're going back. Oh, well, I shouldn't say we're going back. We're still sticking with VCT, but we're going all the way across the globe. We're going to go over to Pacific for a moment. I did want to point out one thing before I answer or before I ask this hot and cold is the fact that Pacific's a little interesting in the fact that there are 4 broadcast days a week. So there are only going to be 4 weeks as opposed to the 5 weeks. So if you're wanting to get your fix in, like it's almost perfect. Do it like right now while there's not really much else going on. I know I'm going to, especially because that's kind of during the time I'm normally up for gym and stuff. But let's go ahead and head into this. We talked about it earlier. Jing coming back to the PRX roster. I don't think we talked about it too much, but essentially has medical clearance, which apparently is very, very rare for the Singaporean army. But it worked out in their favor. Jing's already back. They've already put Moniette back onto the reserve roster. But my hot and cold is PRX will lose to T1 despite Jing being back from the starting roster. Hot being yes, cold being no.
This is a weird one just because like, PRX, they found success, right? Obviously, like they were top 3 in the world at the end of the day. However, like I feel like when we always saw the interviews with PRX, like they were always talking about how like they played so well with Jing, they played well around Jing, but they switched up their style. Like they were playing around Monier and like now they have to kind of flip that back very, very quickly. So I honestly feel like it's gonna mess them up even more to try and go make that change very quickly. And honestly, to see this T1 roster succeed would just be an absolute dream. So I think I'm going to take T1 over PRX.
To keep in mind, T1 did qualify out of Group A, and they actually qualified out of the top of Group A during the kickoff. Now, granted, they beat Bleed, and they're led by that one fraud, Yay. So like that doesn't really surprise me. But they did beat a Zeta division that looked really, really good. So I do think that this T1 roster is pretty solid. I wouldn't be surprised, but I do feel like that if you ask me personally, I think what we're going to see for PRX is they're going to have a hot start. Everyone's going to be like, man, I'm happy we replaced Jing, even though Moniette was looking good. but then they're going to have a stumble, and that's where the real questions are going to come in. I think that comes like week 2 or 3, but I do think that PRX takes a dub this week, personally.
Well, we'll have to see if they do. I think it's a big proving matchup. Again, like I said, for all these teams that went to Masters Madrid, they really need to start off clean. They really need to take some wins, especially because, like you said, the limited amount of weeks all around the globe that you have to try and take those wins as well. So it'll be exciting to see VCT. I am hopping like I do over to League of Legends for our final pick here to rope you on in. And of course, I'll give you guys some backstory on this one. Of course, we are hopping over to the LCK. This is Korea's division of the League of Legends Championship. We are sticking with T1, by the way, who is possibly the greatest team of all time. They do currently hold the World Championship. They have one of the greatest esports players of all time in it, in Faker, and they are currently the 2 seed in playoffs. They're playing Hanwha Life, who is the 3 seed, but kind of has this like meteoric rise, has a possibility to maybe take down the champs. This is an upper bracket matchup, so if you do lose this one, you're not out of the playoffs yet, but it is going to be an exciting one. It is, will T1 win this matchup? The hot is no, or the hot is no, the cold is yes.
Yeah, give me the spicy hot, just because I think that there is going to be this. Baker just kind of had this like meteoric win that like all of a sudden like cemented his legacy, right? I think he loses to the team that's hot here in the quarterfinals, but then does go on a tear and gets back into the grand final and wins it all, and like truly like has like one of the best like story like lock-ins.
Okay, I would love to see
ship it.
Yeah, I would love to see
bank, no briefcase.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup, and we'll have to see, of course, who wins that one. Of course, for LCK, they're still deciding who they're sending over towards MSI, which, of course, is the secondary world championship next to World. So it'll be exciting, of course, for Q. We got to keep getting into League of Legends so we can talk about it more on this podcast as well. But Q, that's all I have for hot and cold. Anything else you got?
No, I don't got anything else for hot and cold. I just gotta say, Llama, while we are in this little lull for I guess you could say RLCS for the next couple of weeks and ALGS, I am gonna be really excited to watch VCT these next few weeks.
Yeah.
But I also just want to give a big shout out that you and I are both like extremely busy like the next like 6 weeks. So it's gonna be really fun to kind of see the stuff outside of the pro scene, but more kind of the stuff that we're doing kind of more coming across. So I just wanted to tip my hat to you and give you kind of a low-key shout out for that before we get out of here. Really.
Oh yeah, we got lots of stuff going on. And as a reminder for you guys at home, if you're not already signed up for those Frost Monday events, make sure you get yourself in the Discord. Absolutely free to enter. And if you don't like playing on Mondays, maybe you like playing on Saturday and Sunday, we got this next Frost Polar Flare event going on. That is going to be on the 13th and 14th of this month. You can play for $1,000, and it is so many good teams we've seen before. You get a chance to play on literally Championship Sunday. Try and rear into that, but make sure you guys are getting in the Discord and make sure you guys are getting in those events.
Yeah, I was also going to say too, I mean, there's just a bunch going on like on the weeklies scene, and also wanted to point out, not only do we have the Polar Flare in 2 weekends, but this weekend, if you're wanting to get involved, we've also got the Lotus 8 event that you and I, we're getting the dream team together. If y'all want to come out and do that, we'd love the Lotus 8 squad over there. Come out and support and have a good time with that as well.
Get yourself signed up for all of these events. I know it's going to be a lot of fun in these coming weeks, not only to kind of find some of these bubble scene events, but also just to see every single esport, like take a little pause and then get right back into the swing of things. I mean, it is just a great time to be an esports fan.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and I love to see that there are pockets where like you can kind of focus on one title and they don't overlap too much. Same thing with like the lands and stuff. It seems like it's like you can kind of focus. Well, I guess 2 technically overlap this weekend, but you know what I mean? It's not like there's everything going on at once. You can kind of get your tidbits here and there, which is really really cool. But Llama, in case, or if you don't have anything else, I do not have anything else. And I think we're actually going to do our producer, who, if he wants to shout himself out on the video, he can feel free to post something up. Nick always doing hard work for not only us with the podcast, but all the hard work over with Frost and really just the bubble scene in general. But I think we're going to wrap this one up a little bit early for you guys, man. We usually get here about that hour mark. I think we're a little bit short of that, man. We did it high five High five, Llama.
Woo.
But man, make sure you guys are getting involved. We're doing a lot of shorts and stuff. Every time you see those things, remember, if you hit the like, the comments, those are the things that lets YouTube know to put it in front of more people. So help us out. Tell somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody about it. All right. Make sure you sign up in the Discord for those tournaments coming up, the ones we talked about earlier. And so we catch y'all back for the next one. Don't forget, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere. Game hard and love hard. All right, y'all. That's Llama. I'm Q. For the rest of the crew, to the front to the back. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Peace.